Hi everyone, Chaplain April here with the latest book haul. I still have two stacks of books about this high that are waiting here in the wings for the next book haul. All right, so we are going to start with This Present Darkness, Frank Peretti. I read this book years and years ago. This is kind of a Christian classic. It has been around for a long time. The guy that wrote it, I don't think he thought it was going to be as popular as it turned out to be. And the reason is because it is all about the spiritual realm. Okay, so it's very difficult as Christians to understand the spiritual realm and to imagine it because we don't have anything, most of us don't have our spiritual eyes open to see the spiritual realm. Sometimes God does allow people to see into that realm. I never have, but I know people that have. And sometimes God will let them have a glimpse, or they will see something or whatever. And maybe he will one day. I mean, my brother Michael saw an angel one time when we were, as missionaries, we were in the mountains of Mexico. I need to ask him about this. And, you know, we had our little travel trailer and our minivan, and we would go into, I have no idea where we were, but it was we would go into very remote places. And at night, one night, he looked up and he saw an angel kind of watching over us. And this is my brother, so of course I believe my brother. I'm not going to tell him, no, you didn't see an angel, and da-da-da, and he was young. Let's see, he was probably... he was probably, 6 or 7 or something, 8, I don't know. And he remembers looking up and seeing an angel. I know lots of people that have seen angels or entertained angels unawares. So I truly believe that the spiritual world exists. So, a lot of people are afraid of it, but why? I mean, the fact is it exists. So why not learn about it? So this, even though this book is fiction, it does give a really cool example of what it would be like if we could see in the spiritual realm. So it talks about spirits and demons and things, and flying around and hindering Christians and stuff. So it is a fast-moving, riveting thriller. This Present Darkness offers a fascinating glimpse into the unseen world of spiritual warfare and the power of prayer. So that is key, because prayer moves things in the spiritual realm. Whether you see it happen, may not see it happen or know it happening, but it's happening in the spiritual world. So I read this book years and years ago. Because it just interested me. I love learning about the spirit world. Bible-based, Christ-based, of course. I'm not going to go watch these stupid horror movies and stuff like that and read horror books. No. But this world does exist. And then I read it again about 6 years ago. I reread it because I wanted to I couldn't remember a whole lot, and so it's really good. And then there's the sequel to that is This Piercing Darkness, and that one is really good too. Okay, so then we have Pastor Craig Groeschel of Life Church, which I attend. This is a book that he wrote, I guess, several years ago. It's called Fight. My husband carried this book around in his car for, I think, 3 years or so. Because I think I bought this whenever, I have an inscription in here. Dear Robert, thankful you are in my life. If we fight together for what is right, God will bring us through. Lots of love, April. December 25th, 13. If I remember right, I bought this at church. Whenever Pastor Craig writes a book, they do like they have the books at the churches, at the different campuses, that you can buy for a really discounted price. So I think I bought this at church, and then I just gave it to him, and then he put it in his car, and I don't know if he read it or not. I'm gonna have to ask him about that. But So it talks about, battles that we're fighting, and let's just read what it says here. So it's supposed to be for men. The reason I gave it to him, because this was a book written for men. With God's help, you'll find strength to fight the battles you know you must win, the ones that determine the state of your heart, the quality of your marriage, and the spiritual health of those you love the most. Craig examines the life of Samson, a strong man with glaring weaknesses. Like many men, Samson taunted his enemy and rationalized his sins. By looking at Samson's life, you'll learn to defeat the demons that make strong men weak. You'll tap into a strength you never knew was possible. You'll become who God made you to be, a man who knows how to fight for what's right. What's really interesting is I just did my last study just right before I did this video, last fruit of the spirit of self-control, and I used Samson as an example, and I had no idea that this had Samson in it. That's just kind of how God does things. So I know this is a good book. I mean, I listen to Craig's sermons every week, so I know they're good, and I know his books are good. All right, here is one called The Insanity of God, a true story of faith resurrected. I think this is one that I found at the Goodwill, and I didn't know anything about it, but just reading a little bit about it, it says, Nick Ripken has walked with followers of Christ from the hills of Kentucky to war-torn Somalia. Faced with suffering in his own family, the realities of war around him, and the systemic destruction of the work he felt called to do, the evil at times was overwhelming. How could God be good when life was so dark? How could Christ reign victorious on a day when the number of martyrs included some of Nick's best friends? Is there really power in Christ no matter the circumstance? The Ashes of Somalia led the Ripkins to travel around the world to listen to the stories of more than 600 believers in over 60 countries. So I picked this up after reading that because I thought, oh my gosh, that is really cool. And of course, I love stories like that. I love real stories of things, people that have been living for God and had these amazing things happen in their life, or had questions. And, God answers those questions in such incredible ways. So that looked like a really, really good book that hopefully I will get to after I read all this other stuff I'm reading. Right now I'm actually reading Frank Peretti, which was this Present Darkness, the first book I showed. I'm reading a book that he wrote that's fiction, that's a little different. It's about two teens that go into like an invisible world. So I'm reading that book, and that's actually really good. I'm going to do a review on that as soon as I finish that. Okay, so we have Rick Warren's The Purpose-Driven Life. Rick Warren is a pastor of a church, I believe, out in California. Very prominent guy. I've seen him interviewed on news channels and things like that. I think he's mentored a lot of people in the faith, a lot of prominent pastors and things he's mentored. He's written tons of books. I love this book because I believe that our lives should be purpose-driven. In college I studied philosophy, religion and philosophy, and I just didn't like philosophy because it's all these guys with all these drab, ideas of why we're here, and why are we created, and what are we here for, and all these empty theories that they come up with. The only thing we need to know is that we are here for God's purpose. God has a purpose for each one of us, and if we live our lives determined to accomplish that purpose, then we are going to have we're going to have a drive in us. We're going to want to get up each day. It's going to help combat depression, anxiety, and all those things, because we know we're here for a reason, and we know that every day we have a purpose. And that's why I love this book. I read this book years ago, it was on the bestseller list. So let's read back here. A lot of people have endorsed it, like Bruce Wilkinson, author of The Prayer of Jabez, Lee Strobel, author of The Case for Christ, Max Lucado, and Billy Graham and Franklin Graham have all endorsed this book. So it's just about the meaning of life. So let's read on the inside here. You are not an accident. Even before the universe was created, God had you in mind, and he planned you for his purposes. These purposes will extend far beyond the few years you will spend on earth. You are made to last forever. So I was saying this in one of my other videos, that I feel like I don't belong here because we are only passing through earth. So we don't want to build up our treasures on earth and everything. We want to get to the will and the plan that God has for us. Okay, self-help books often suggest that you try to discover the meaning and purpose of your life by looking within yourself. But Rick Warren says that is the wrong place to start. I completely agree with him. I was just saying that in my last video where I was doing the fruits of the Holy Spirit. We're talking about self-control, self-discipline, and that God does all these things through us. It's not a strength that we have in ourselves. It's a strength that God gives us. So we don't need to look within and find that inner strength and all that. You begin with God, your creator, and his reason for creating you. You were made by God, for God, and until you understand that, life will never make sense. I mean, awesome. So, this book will help you understand why you are alive and God's amazing plan for you both here and now and for eternity. So some of the chapter titles: What on earth am I here for? That's the beginning of it. And that's a question that everybody on the planet pretty much has, right? And then purpose number 1, you were planned for God's pleasure. Purpose number 2, you were formed for God's family. Purpose number 3, you were created to become like Christ. Purpose number 4, you were shaped for serving God. Purpose 5, you were made for a mission. So he tells you what you're here for, and then he gives you all these different purposes that you can that you have, and then that goes into God's specific will for each person, which I believe there is one. A lot of people call it God's perfect will or God's permissive will. So there's perfect will, permissive will. That's gonna have to be a whole study, because I don't know if I believe in the permissive will thing. But anyway, okay. Wisdom Chasers. This was really interesting. This was a Goodwill find, I remember, because it's by Nathan Foster, and I found out by reading the back of this that he is Richard Foster's son. Richard Foster is the guy that taught at Friends University in Wichita, Kansas, where I went for my last year. I only went there for 1 year. He taught there before I got there, and then I was under a professor that he had mentored, and I can't remember that professor's names. I think it was Stott. Anyway, so Richard Foster has written several books, and I'm like, man, I missed it. I could have sat under him. That would have been so cool. So I guess his son wrote a book. I have a couple of Richard Foster's books around somewhere. I never actually read them, but I just thought, oh, it's so cool because he taught at Friends right before I got there. So Nathan Foster, it says, one day Nathan Foster found himself asking his father across the chasm between them, "Hey Dad, you want to climb the highest mountain in Colorado?" And for Nathan and Richard, that simple question changed everything. With no hiking experience to draw on, they embarked on a journey of physical challenge, discovering just how far they could push themselves. For Nathan, a parallel journey took him inside himself. Having grown up in the shadow of a famous father, Richard J. Foster, author of Celebration of Discipline, which is the book I have around here, Nathan had a lot of questions about who his father really was. Would hiking open the door for him to get to know his distant figure? as the one-time experiment evolved into a decade of challenging hikes up Colorado's 14,000-foot peaks, the 14ers, Nathan navigated his 20s, finishing college, choosing a career, possible cross-country move, the early years of marriage, and major personal crisis. Along the way, he would discover exactly what his father could offer him. So I was really interested in this because, he's a son of a famous guy that wrote this famous book, so he's trying to find his way in life, and I think this will be really interesting to read and find out kind of what he learned from his father and from going on those hikes. Okay, we have Sarah. So last book haul I showed you Abigail, and I was talking about how these are fictional books, but they're based on stories in the Bible. So Sarah is Abraham's wife, and Abraham is, the God, the father of many nations, the father of Isaac and Ishmael. So we were talking about this in Bible study yesterday with my mentor, that Isaac was God's the promised child that God told Abraham he would have, but Sarah didn't have kids, and she got older and older and older and never had kids. So he went and got with her maid, and so that they could supposedly have a child. So that's an example of us taking things into our own hands and not waiting on God, right? So out of that came Ishmael with Hagar. So Ishmael is the father of the father of the Arabs, all of the Arab nations that are around today, and the Arabs can be traced back to Ishmael. Isaac is the father of the Jews, Jewish tribes, I guess is what it is. So he's the promised child of Abraham and Sarah. So I'm interested to read this because it's going to be based on that story from the Bible. It says, Sarah's story begins in the cradle of civilization, the Sumerian city-state of Ur, a land of desert heat, towering gardens, and immense wealth. The daughter of a powerful lord, Sarah balks at the marriage her father has planned for her. So this is all about her marrying Abraham and that whole journey. So this will be good. It's not very big, so it'll be kind of a quick read and give us, a little insight into what her life would have been like back then in that culture and how hard it was for women. Oh my gosh, I just can't imagine. I was telling my mentor yesterday that I don't think I would have made it. I think I could have only lived now in the time I'm in, because the things that women have had to go through the centuries, and a lot of them still do on the planet, is just unreal and is so wrong and uncalled for. So I might get upset. This might make me upset to read about some of that stuff, but that's the way it was. I'm just thankful I don't live in that time. Okay, we have The Call. This is an autobiography of Oral Roberts. I don't know what happened to the jacket to this, but anyway, Oral Roberts is, a famous minister. He there's Oral Roberts University here in Tulsa, and, he's had all kinds of scandals and things with his life. So I just thought it would be really cool to read his autobiography, because I love autobiographies and I love to see how people started in ministry and what happened and who influenced them, and all of that. I just think it's fascinating. So this is about how he got started in ministry. He was a preacher's son and everything, and and I think he knew Catherine Coleman, or Catherine Coleman influenced him. So I really can't wait to read that. And that's not a very big book either. I can read that pretty quickly. Oh, okay, we'll do this one. A Pastor in New York, The Life and Times of Spencer Cone. I had never heard of this person. And I was intrigued, of course, because it says a pastor in New York. And And on the back it says, Spencer Houghton Cone is a name unknown in the secular world and not well known to the Christian community, but a name known to God from all eternity. In fact, this is the name of a man destined to be one of his chosen vessels, gifted and raised up to accomplish great things for the kingdom of God. This is the life story of a wonderful man of God who lived through troubled times as a pastor in New York. It is about a marvelous conversion, overcoming hardships through faith, the power of preaching, and the influence of a godly life. Spencer Cone loved Christ and devoted himself fully to his service. This book is an inspiring read of one whom the world was not worthy. I love to hear about people that I never knew about, because as one of my fellow chaplains told me one time, godly people are everywhere. God has them strategically placed all over in every walk of life and every profession and everything. There are godly people, and we don't hear about all of them. A lot of them, they don't write their life story, or no one writes it, or no one knows what they've been through and what they've gone through. And so here's one that is not very prominent that we can know about, and they're sometimes they make movies about these obscure people that no one hears about, and the movie ends up being so amazingly powerful because their lives were that. So got interrupted, but I love hearing these types of stories of obscure people that God is using, because God, everyone has a destiny. Everyone has something that God placed them here on the planet specifically to do. And it's really cool to know that God has people all over, and they're all doing different things that He has asked them to do. And they're accomplishing His will for their life. And whether they write about it or not, they know that in heaven there's going to be a reward for them once they're done and they accomplish it. And that's what all of our goals are. Our goal is to be, as Christians and followers of Christ, is to accomplish that will. So wherever God places you, like I said before, He might have asked you to be an accountant, or He could ask you to just head up a committee, or be a mom. Maybe that's what your mission in life is. So He doesn't, a lot of times we think, well, I'm not out there doing that, and man, this person is really doing so much for God. All you have to worry about is that thing God asked you to do. You don't have to worry about what God has asked other people to do, because that's their time to shine. If God has made them to make movies for Him, and that's their niche, and that's their talent, and that's where God's placed them, just admire them. Don't try to become them, that's a whole nother discussion too, I think, because that's one of the things that the enemy uses against us a lot. Well, look what they're doing, and you're not doing much, but you're accomplishing that one thing, specific thing that God asks you to do, which is going to help someone else accomplish their thing, which is part of the puzzle. It fits into the puzzle, right? So you're not going to be seen in the same way this other person is. You're not going to have the same influence, but they're not going to have the same influence you have. So all we have to do is worry about what God asked us to do. And I'm guilty of this whole thing too. I went to Women of Faith and was like, oh my God, I should be up there speaking. I'm not doing anything for Him. And oh my gosh, I haven't written 4 books. And so just know that it's God's desire for you to live a life filled with purpose, but accomplishing also that certain thing that you are to accomplish. And that's all God cares about. He's not going to ask you to go do everything out there, and whatever He gives you to do, you're going to be able to do. You're going to be able to do it well. So God bless all of you. Book haul is done, and tomorrow I'll probably do a devotion. So I will see you then. You guys take care. I'll see you in the next video.